Welcome to the broadcast, everybody. Thank you very much for dropping by to see me. I am dying to get your reaction to Catherine's gown and hear your opinions on whether it was a yay or nay, because Her Royal Highness, the Princess of Wales, took the world's media by storm with the swish of a train of chiffon last night on the arm of her dashing husband, the Prince of Wales. And it seems that the interwebs are divided on the issue. So I want to know which way you fall, my loves. Or can you not make up your mind, a little bit like me? My OB says, River, can you give your opinion of Kate's outfit at the BAFTAs? I thought it was a rare miss for her. And for those of you that haven't seen it, I'll flash up some images. I'm sure most of you will have seen by now because it's been everywhere, but she wore a McQueen number. We know that she loves McQueen, so do I, and I'm wearing McQueen today, of course, my dear, although the buttons are still busted on this thing. She was wearing McQueen, but it was the same white gown that she wore in 2019 to the same event. So it's been reworked, upcycled, very full of green credentials, I suppose you could say, and it's created a bit of a stir, and I kind of like it. But you wanted my reaction, and I'm going to give it to you direct. And there are pros and cons, because I haven't fallen in love with it, nor do I absolutely loathe it, although I tend to sort of waver between the two feelings. But I know that some of you are interested in my opinion when it comes to a royal style and fashion, so I will serve it to you, my dear. She worked again on this outfit, by the way, with Sarah Burton, who is the same wedding dress designer that obviously performed that function for her wedding, and she is creative director at McQueen, and she worked with Sarah Burton to transform the previous look. They removed the corsage, replacing it with chiffon, this splendid chiffon train, and a black clutch was in hand, and she decided to pair it with some sort of peachy nudey, almost goldy earrings and slippers, didn't she? The earrings are from Zara. I'm not sure where the slippers, the high heels, are from. But all eyes were on the star of the show, the opera gloves. The opera gloves had an outing. Now, as you know, I'm a huge fan of gloves on royalty. In fact, I think it's a darn shame and a pity that they aren't used more often at the moment. On the plus side was actually Catherine's deportment, for one thing. She was mega relaxed from what I could see, and I looked at the video footage as well. She was mega relaxed, so she came across very natural, very at ease, especially with William. It was noticed that she seemed to give him a little fond pat on the derriere at one point. On the plus side too, it was daring, it was confident, it was playful, and there was a sort of avant-garde edge to the choice. It got people talking, it's got those green credentials, which seems to be in favour at the moment. And of course, she is always lovely. I did find that every photograph you see of it tells a different story. Some are flattering, some aren't so flattering, but the video footage was very encouraging. One thing that I did find was wanting, although her hair looked as lustrous and lovely as always, I think that together with the opera gloves and in this gown, I would have rather liked to have seen it piled up in an updo on the head, along the lines of Audrey Hepburn, and she would give us an updo and serve that sort of look. I think that would be something different to what we've seen and suit the outfit. Try not to be offended when I tell you that my initial impression when I first saw this outfit was of penguin vibes. I'm sorry to say, it gave off a look of the penguin. Flippers at the side, didn't it? I think that was the danger in this choice, and when she's captured from certain angles, I mean, you could pick up a penguin, as they say here in the kingdom. You could pick up a penguin, you surely could. A royal penguin, of course, you understand. But it was flippers at the ready. But to be quite honest with you, when it comes to gloves, and opera gloves in particular, there is always a danger of them looking slightly bizarre or slightly weird. And as you've probably noticed, I've been wearing black opera gloves myself on the broadcast. Especially for tall people, they're always going to magnify the hand, the extremities, and make it look larger than it does, naturally, strangely. And actually, I saw that when she met with a lady that was wearing, that I thought looked absolutely fabulous, in a gold frock with gold gloves, but she was fairly tall as well, and she suffered the same problem, and it looked like she had a giant robotic arm at one point. It was like RoboCop with a big hand. And that's just the nature of wearing that garment, I'm afraid. It has that effect. So you've got to just wear it with confidence. You've got to just work it and own it. But I thought that woman looked fabulous. And she had slightly lilac hair as well to go with it. That was pulled together really, really well, I thought. See, I'm not a fan of monochrome, so that's just to my taste. It's very rare that just black and white will appeal to me. And she did break it up with the nudie, pearly kind of goldy accessories. And I'm afraid that was where was let down to me, because there was a simplicity to the look, and I think a high hairdo would have helped that along, but those accessories for me jarred. I know it's difficult to find the breakaway colour when it comes to monochrome, and for me it didn't achieve it, and I didn't like the earrings, I've got to tell you. They're from Zara, they were the cheapest part of the outfit, and for my money I'm afraid they looked it. It's not always the way with budget clothing, of course, but those earrings, it put me in mind of a sort of mother of pearl, a faux mother of pearl discs, those kind of affairs that you find on lampshades hanging down from the 1970s or 80s. It didn't do it for me at all. I could almost hear them sort of jangling and clanging about as I looked. For my taste, and I understand that perhaps they wanted to do something different, but for my taste it would have been diamonds in the ears. Diamonds on the ears, and I did think for a moment maybe on the cuff of the arm as well, to sort of break up the long sleekness of those gloves, but then I realised no, absolutely not. It would be too drag queen. And there is a simplicity to the lines that she created. And unfortunately, because her arms were a different colour, they appeared to vanish among various backgrounds, and she appeared limbless at some points. And at other points, as I've found when I've experimented with them here on the broadcast, sometimes you can appear like some sort of weird magician pulling objects out of thin air, because the black arms kind of disappear into the furnishings, the black velvet. But all in all, even though I might have tweaked a few things, I did think that she was chic, and I did think that it was appreciated by many of us that it wasn't predictable. And you can't say that the two of them didn't look blissfully happy in each other's company and totally easy. And on that subject, I know that I'll never be able to cease the flow entirely, but please, I'm still getting questions inquiring about affair rumours. Are they splitting? The same question, the same rumour emerges every week. If you're new here, I addressed this. I was actually first out of the stables to come forward and confirm to you after speaking. I mean, I already knew instinctively, but after actually spending time one-on-one with friends in Norfolk, for example, who are more than closely acquainted with those circles, I was able to relate to you definitely and without prejudice that these rumours are a malicious falsehood. So I do implore you, with all respect, not to entertain these sort of silly notions. I do realise that everybody's under scrutiny and everybody's human, so William and Catherine can make mistakes and failings like everything else, but really this affair rumour that keeps bubbling up, the same rumour, the same person, which has been debunked many times over, is tiresome, to be quite honest. Can't they come out with some new lie? And also, while I'm on the topic, it's not just the Prince and Princess of Wales that deserve some sort of riposte to stupid rumours, because some of you have been asking me about these headlines that have hit the newspapers about Gordon Getty and Meghan's involvement with him. Well, whether or not she's lunching with the gentleman, these ridiculous, stupid, daft rumours about her, the kind of stories that some people will swallow, is astounding. Dame Helen Mirren also was at the BAFTA ceremony paying tribute to the late Queen Elizabeth, and that was quite a nice gesture because Queen Elizabeth had been involved with her patronage of the BAFTAs over many years, so that was nice, but they ran some dumb piano music under the speech. I'm not sure if this has been confirmed, but by all accounts it appears that Queen Camilla is well recovered from her bout with the lurgy that we all know about. Buckingham Palace announced that she will host her literary reception at Clarence House on Thursday. This is the one that was previously postponed, so it's nice to know that that's going ahead and nice to know that Her Majesty is well. Sadie England has a question about Prince William's clothes and asks, River, question, I'm wondering about Prince William's closet. Aye. How many tuxes does this guy own? Plus all the uniforms. Seriously, Seems like I've seen him in at least a dozen different tuxes. You are the only one who might have a clue about this. Really? Love your little programme. Thank you, dear. Always brings a smile. Thank you, Sadie England. Well, I can't claim that I know the number of suits that he possesses or military uniforms, my dear, nor do I especially care. I'm sure the answer is a lot, or more than most people. But I can tell you that his favourite tailor, or I should say his go-to, is Tom Sweeney, who is a classic Savile Row tailor. He loves Tom Sweeney, big fan, but for morning suits he will go to Geeves and Hawkes. And Geeves and Hawkes hold no less than 3 royal warrants from the Queen. 3 royal warrants. And William also wore their military tailoring on his wedding day. He's very fond of his watch. He's very fond of his Seamaster watch. It was gifted by Diana, and you'll always see him wearing it. It's the one with a blue dial and a steel case. Very classic. He has a very classic sense of style. He feels more at home in casual wear compared to Charles, so he prefers to be in the cottons and the linens rather than the suits, but of course he's not afraid to don a nice suit, and he likes black and he likes navy blues, and he's pretty steady as you go, but he's not afraid to display a little dash of eccentricity here and there. Thank God, because how boring would life be without a little bit of that, a little bit of flourish. I hope to see more of that as he approaches kingship, of course. But we saw a flash of it at the Top Gun premiere, didn't we, a few months ago, when he wore those embroidered slipper affairs with a little motif on them. But he loves his casuals, his chinos, his jumpers, his press shirts, and he gets a lot of those casuals from Luca Filoni, an Italian designer. Another holder of the royal warrant is Turnbull and Asser, and along with other members of the royal family, that is popular with William. Particularly when it comes to shirts, he will turn to Turnbull and Asser. Same with Henry Poole. And even though his style is quite different than Charles's style, he does have a fondness for his father's sunglasses, and he followed in that tradition of the Wayfarers. He is a very stylish man, you know, and he hasn't really got any excuse not to be, because he was brought up with a father who has exquisite taste, and let's face it, can afford the best luxuries and bespoke tailoring needed to put together an outfit. Although, you know, for some people, I'm afraid money won't buy class and style, and I'm afraid that I do, unfortunately, have to point to his brother Harold in this circumstance, you know. But I've got to give Harold a proper to, because he has been trying. Because, you know, when I began this broadcast a couple of years ago, moaning about how sloppy he is, you know, come on, fork out for something a bit more presentable that might do something with that frame of yours, that might bring out the best for your silhouette, Harry. Do. Well, eventually he did. Probably under Meghan's tutelage, you know. He turned to Brioni, and he was wearing all the fine cottons and cashmeres, and, you know, spending a bit more of that merching money on his clothes here and there, and ultimately it didn't behoove him. It didn't do anything for him, and I've had to accept that that is just Harry, and it doesn't matter what you dress him up in. He will always look like a vagabond of some kind. He's just got that look about him, so I will give him props for that. You tried, Harold, my dear. But unlike William, your darling brother, he just ain't got it. What can you do? I received many comments from lots of you who have had problems with neighbours after I mentioned that I have some nuisance neighbours at the moment. Many of you noted noisy neighbours, this kind of thing. I've got to say the problem I'm having, I'm not going to go into, but it is not in this instance related to noise. These neighbours aren't surrounding me that closely. But, you know, I've lived in many different types of accommodation over the years, from shared flats and houses to, you know, very cramped, tight London townhouses, fancy London townhouses, rural retreats with very few neighbours but still a community, villages, and there are different problems with all kinds of neighbours. No matter how physically close they are to you, there are problems that can be found, and you reiterated that in the comment section. It was interesting to read through your experiences of neighbours that are either menacing or a nuisance. and how you dealt with them. Well, on that subject, something appeared in the newspaper that day of another nuisance neighbour, and I'm sad to say that it appears to be James Middleton, brother of Catherine. Ooh! And of course, I will caveat this by saying that there are several sides to a story, and then there's the truth, so I'm not accusing James myself, old Jimmy boy, but it seems there's a bitter feud going on because he moved to that rather wonderful pile in Berkshire 18 months ago at Alizé, didn't he? He moved to a lovely house in the country with all of those dogs. A businessman lives 130 yards from this abode and has lived there for many years. It was his country idyll, he says. It was his retreat. David Alderton, yes, he says that James Middleton has wrecked his country idyll by hoarding noisy farm machinery. The things that people collect boggles the mind, doesn't it, my dear? My jewels and jemmies in charity shop finds don't make a nuisance of themselves or noises to anybody else. But farm machinery, antique vintage farm machinery, well, apparently they do. Apparently he keeps a dumper truck running for hours on end every day, pumping toxic exhaust fumes into the surrounding countryside too. And this guy says his peace has been shattered. Well, we've only got his side of the story, but I will say, Jimmy dear, if you are watching this, and if what this guy's saying is true, please reevaluate, because I have every sympathy for anybody with inconsiderate neighbours. I think it's the worst thing in the world. I've received a question about Samantha Markle's lawsuit, and I'm going to speak plainly and honestly as I find, and those who don't like it can stick it. Brenda says, I have a question re Samantha's lawsuit against H&M. I'm wondering if her lawyers would be able to use the bullying reports from the palace as proof of the lies, her character, and other things, or anything said and done in Britain, Canada, and the USA. Well, thank you, Brenda dear. It's a perfectly legitimate question, but you and others out there may not like my answer. I think the lawsuit is doomed. I don't think it's going to go anywhere, and I think that it will be thrown out for many reasons. But the main reason being is that it is a very weak case. And this isn't a popularity contest. It doesn't matter how many of you prefer Samantha over Meghan or believe one over the other. This is a matter of legality. And ever since I heard about this lawsuit, I thought that it was a stretch. And aside from some of the protections mentioned by Meghan's lawyer with regards to the First Amendment, much of it also comes down to common sense in general. I'm just going to pick out one example. The example where there are complaints over Meghan's misrepresentation of her relationship to Samantha, where she says more or less that she grew up as an only child. And of course Samantha takes umbrage to this. We all know that Meghan isn't strictly speaking an only child. But I know, and if you don't know, I'm sorry to break this to you, but you're either stupid or mad. I knew exactly what she meant when she said that she grew up an only child. And whether you like it or not, that was her experience. She didn't say that she was literally an only child. She grew up as one. I know what that means instantly. I know what she meant instantly. And Samantha can argue the toss about that, about how much she was actually in Meghan's life. But the fact is that she did spend a lot of her life away from her siblings, much like an only child. And a lot of that as well, aside from the fact she didn't live with them for much of the time, and only really saw them on various occasions. It was also to do with the fact that they were of different generations as well. So I have friends of mine who are on good terms with many of their siblings, but who also felt that they grew up as an only child in a similar mould. And I think it is a real stretch of the imagination to expect most people not to understand that. And also, I don't think that it's necessarily the gravest dig that one person could throw at another. And some of you told me in the comment section that she'd hired some sort of hotshot fabulous lawyer. Now, forgive me if I'm wrong. In fact, forgive me if I'm wrong about any of the facts that I present to you over this segment when I talk about the court case. I admit, I'm not well briefed on it. I've only looked glancingly at some of the issues facing it for an overview, so I do accept that. And I don't know anything about Meghan's lawyer. Samantha's lawyer I'm talking about. But I did do a little bit of Googling, a little bit of research, and immediately as soon as his marketing and advertising came up, I shuddered a little bit. It was very sort of old school marketing and advertisements. And it certainly seems that this lawyer does not have the best reputation in town, and I'm sure many lawyers don't, but many lawyers do. And of course he's associated with President Trump. He was a classmate with President Trump, or with Donald Trump, so it seems. They were classmates, and he still represents Trump. And this isn't about Republican versus Democrat, by the way, as far as I'm concerned. I've defended Trump on many occasions, so just before anybody starts going down that road. So it's not about that. I love fruits from all sections of the basket. And before anybody jumps in and points it out, I am of course aware that winning the case may not be the only positive outcome, and that simply bringing the litigation process to public attention, as it has done so far, may reap some sort of benefit of some kind or other, although I don't hold out too much hope about that. But it very much puts one in mind of that team that became a bit of a laughingstock for threatening to release the Kraken. We're still waiting for the Kraken. I get those kind of vibes for him. What was her name? That Sidney Powell, Linwood, and the Jenner gal, were full of promise, but delivered very little. And even Rudy Giuliani, from what I found online, the Florida Supreme Court briefly shut him down, and he has had to pay various sanctions, and they shut him down for poor professional judgment. And do remember, and I'm not saying this to disparage Samantha, I'm just saying it to draw a comparison. This is the woman that wrote a book called The Diary of Princess Pushy, my sister, So it's not as if she hasn't done her sort of share of disparagement. And I'm afraid to say that ilk of lawyer, and I don't mean Republican, but that style of legal team, don't compare favourably to the likes of Meghan's lawyer, who, and the likes of Jenny Afia. I might not be her greatest fan, but there's no doubt that they operate on a slicker level and present in a much more savvy, slick fashion. Yes, Meghan's lawyer apparently is Michael Crump. I can't read my writing actually. Is it Crump or Crump? I think Crump. A bit of crumpet there, my dear. Excuse me if I'm wrong. And Kim Kardashian said of him in 2017, he does all my lawsuits. So he's got form with the Kardashians, the Jenners, Streisand, and Sandra Bullock. And unfortunately, I happened to agree with what he came out with in his opening statement when he said that I'm reminded of the old saying, don't make a federal case of it. Not every perceived slight ought to be litigated, and that's true here. And I do understand that could also apply to some of Meghan's complaints in the past, but the fact of the matter is that she wins. She has the right team, the right approach, and she wins, whether we like it or not. He also says, plaintiff is taking issue with Meghan's own impression of her childhood growing up, but that's not a proper subject matter for a court of law. And in that respect, I do agree that it is not a matter for the court of law. And a lot of the complaints that Samantha has revolve around the revelations from Finding Freedom. And while I fully understand that they were fed information, a bullet list, from Rachel Ragland, we all know that she provided clues, tidbits, her version of events. We all know that. But the responsibility and the legal responsibility has to come down to the publishers, the authors, more along those sort of lines. Samantha was undeniably criticised, from my recollection, from my memory, fairly cautiously criticised and carefully criticised by Meghan, that I believe that she was. But do I think that would be a stretch of legal understanding to pull that from criticism into the realm of defamation? Go figure. Thank you for your company, my dears. I appreciate you popping in for a little natter, and I look forward to seeing you on the next broadcast. If you'd like to treat me to a chocolate eclair, my tip jar is in the description box below. Leave me a nice juicy comment, and I'll see you next time. Ta-ra!